Springtime. The time for so much to happen all at once. The Stanley Cup playoffs in full swing, some teams even finishing up the first round. The same can be said for the NBA playoffs, as we're starting to find out who's the real contenders, and of course, who are the pretenders. The spring football games are starting to wrap up, WT included finishing up their spring practices. And then of course, speaking of football, you can't forget, the NFL Draft comes next week. It's all here and more here on this first ever edition of Heino's Highlights.
This is Heino's Highlights, where Heinen is the name, covering sport topics and events is the game.
And you know it.
And now, ladies and gentlemen,
Swish, I'm bound.
your host of Heino's Highlights, Heino himself, Austin Heinen.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the first ever edition of Heino's Highlights. Man, oh man, I cannot tell you how excited I've been to finally get this first show going. Now, first and foremost, real quick, before we talk anything sports, answer the one question, what drove me to do this show? Well, real quick, long story short, if any of you follow me on Facebook or Twitter, somewhat frequently, you'll know I post a lot, and on Facebook, my statuses can be rather extensive, and on Twitter, since there's that 140 characters thing, it's just a lot of bits and pieces. So, instead of following up with all of that, it just came to my head, maybe it's better off to put in a show. So, here we are. And hopefully you'll enjoy it. I hope it picks up its popularity, but, of course, you gotta start somewhere. But enough about that. Without further ado, let's get digging into some of these sports topics. So the first subject here in today's show is a very interesting headliner that maybe arguably caught more headliners than the NFL Draft or perhaps even the NHL or in some NBA playoffs. Those of you that may or may not know what I'm talking about, Connor McGregor really had an interesting week. Now, I gotta confess right up in front, UFC is usually not something I follow all that closely. It's not that I don't like it, it's just a matter of I just really never have. It's just that kind of a thing. I just never really have watched UFC on a regular basis. Just haven't. But Conor McGregor, we can all agree, is a very interesting character in more ways than one. This week, it seems that he almost retired. Okay, not seems, he did. April 19th, the same day where yours truly turned 23, he said, "I'm retiring young. Thanks for the cheese. Catch yuz later." Confessingly, I have no idea what the thanks for the cheese part is all about.
Fancy cheese. We'll go somewhere where there's...
Maybe that's just one of his things. Truthfully and honestly and confessingly, I don't know. But I do know that once he came back, 2 days later, April the 21st, he made a gigantic statement on Facebook. And bottom line, it basically just said, "I'm not retiring. Here's the why I'm frustrated." I'm not going to read you the whole thing. I'll put a link in it here on YouTube, and once I post it on Facebook as well, probably in the comment section as well, if you so decide to read the whole thing. But a couple that really caught my eye was his quotes of this: "I've become lost in the game of promotion and forgot about the art of fighting." Another one, and this one I'm going to filter a little bit. "There comes a time you need to stop handing out flyers and get back to the dang shop." Regardless of how you say it, you get the point. Now, with that said, obviously it's the promotional stuff, the extra stuff that outside of fighting that has frustrated him. I'll be honest, I don't blame him. That stuff can be stressful, and it's in the contract. But should it be? That's a whole nother argument. To somewhat back that up, I'll bring up the Marshawn Lynch case. Now, before I do, I want to make it clear, yes, there are some big differences between the McGregor case and the Lynch case. However, a similarity that they have here is that McGregor is paid to fight. And he says that himself. I am paid to fight, not yet paid to promote. And in Lynch's case, I mean, we all know what he said in those interviews. You know, I'm just here to not get fined, and yeah, and you know why I'm here. Now, yes, McGregor does not have to fight in the UFC, and this isn't in his contract. Same thing with Lynch, when he had the problem with the media. He doesn't have to play in the NFL. It is a choice. The place is a business. My argument is this, and I've gotten razzed on a little bit because of it, because, well, I am media, so people don't always understand why I think this, but I do agree with them on this. The bottom line, they're getting paid to do the sport. Lynch gets paid to play football, or at least he did, depending on whether or not he comes back. Or, in McGregor's case, he gets paid to fight. You can give the most inspirational interview, and you're not going to get paid for it. Unless they decide to put it on a t-shirt, but I can't remember too many t-shirts that have quotes from an actual player's interview. Bottom line there being, I don't blame them for their frustration. Because really, bottom line, they play for the sport. Not the media attention, not really the promotions unless it's an endorsement, and by the sounds of it, that's not always the case with McGregor. Sometimes it's just taking up his time and getting in the way of his fighting. What if it's paid or not, though? Either way, it takes out that extra time. Not that you're fighting 24/7. And if you wanted to pull, like, government stuff in this, the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment, First Amendment obviously about freedom of speech and freedom of a whole bunch of other stuff, the fourth one discussing privacy, Conor McGregor and Marshawn Lynch could have that argument. It's a very fair point to me. And really another thing to consider, what good is an interview if all the person says is, yeah, you know why I'm here. I'm just here so I don't get fined. Thanks for the cheese. Seriously, what are you going to use those for? I mean, blooper reel, maybe. I mean, yeah, it's entertaining, but it's not informative about the game. So really, it's not really worth much. But depending on who you ask, I suppose it's opinionated manner. I'm not saying there needs to be a change. I'm not saying that at all. But I do think this is something that not just the UFC or the NFL should look at. I think everyone should really look at that, because this has become kind of a growing phenomenon. And they've not been the only two that have said things along these certain lines. Again, I'm not saying it needs to be totally cut out of their contract, because yes, the media needs someone to talk to. I mean, they have a job to do as well. There can't be a rule that bans media from talking to players. But this is why we have players' associations. Because, well, they want to make sure the players have their rights and are not being taken advantage of. I'll leave it at this. I'm not saying that it needs to change, but I do think that this is a little cause for concern because it's just become a little bit of a growing topic in sports, and it's starting to creep up on us. So, on perhaps a less controversial topic, let's talk about some playoffs.
Playoffs?
NBA playoffs, to be precise.
Playoffs?
Now, some rounds are about wrapped up, so to speak. Some teams have already been clinching their spot, moving on, and we're starting to find out who's the real guys and who's the fake guys. Contenders from pretenders in another form. But what is that one team that could sneak up on people? One team that I'm going to say, watch out for. Because they might sneak up on you. Because they have some very dangerous pieces that can do some damage to many different teams. Watch out for the Miami Heat. Now, obviously, I have been on the Heat's train for a while. I mean, I just like watching them. Dwayne Wade is a big reason for that, but it's not just Dwayne Wade. I mean, with him, you are also talking about Hussein Whiteside. You got Justice Winslow. You got Josh Smith. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other shooters. I mean, I could go on and on about all the people that are there that can do damage offensively. I mean, Luol Deng, that's another one. You get the point. They have some weapons. The Heat's biggest thing, and it's the big deciding factor on how far they can go, is defense, which has been a very inconsistent thing for them. As the saying is, defense wins championships. If you ain't got a defense that can get you a few stops, then you ain't going to win. But then again, as I always say, you can have the best defense, but if you don't at least put up some points, you can have like a Denver Broncos caliber defense and ain't going to mean nothing. Even Peyton Manning in that Super Bowl had to do a little work. The fact was, yeah, he didn't do a lot, but he did enough. But that's another subject. All I'm saying is about the Miami Heat, keep an eye on them because they're not exactly a team that everyone's talking about. What with San Antonio, LeBron on Cleveland, and of course, like I said earlier, Golden State's record-breaking year. They've kind of been a little bit under the radar, and I'm just saying, keep an eye on them. I wouldn't be surprised if they made a little surprising run. Maybe not to the NBA Finals, but at least to the conference finals. But who is my favorite to win the NBA Finals? Well, obviously, you can put the big three contenders. Obviously, your top three, in probably this order, is Golden State, San Antonio, then you got Cleveland. Truthfully, I believe whoever wins the conference finals between San Antonio and Golden State, that to me, or not just to me, to a lot of people, is the actual NBA championship. I would be stunned if it was anybody else. I mean, the Clippers, they're good, but they ain't got the same pieces as Golden State or San Antonio. Now, part of that depends on also if Curry can get back, which it is predicted that he should, but really, against the Rockets, the Warriors don't need Curry. They don't need Steph Curry to come out and in order to put the Rockets away. What if it means losing a game or two? So be it. It just gives him that much more time to rest. So yeah, honestly, I have no problem with what Steve Kerr is doing with the Warriors right now and sitting Curry down. But that's a whole other subject once more. Out of those three teams, I actually favor the Spurs a little bit more. Not saying that the Warriors are not, but I feel the Spurs are a little more better coached team. Not because Steve Kerr is a bad coach, but because Greg Popovich has been in the playoffs so many times. He knows what it takes not only to get to the NBA Finals, but how to win it. Now, what if LeBron will meet him there? My assumption and prediction is, yeah, probably. It's not written in stone by any means, because again, I'm saying, watch out for the Miami Heat. But at the same time, my pick is the San Antonio Spurs. I think they're going to knock off the Warriors, but it will not be anything less than 6. It will either go game 6 or 7, and bank on it. Both teams are way too good to not win at least 2 games, but whoever gets down 3-2, that's going to be the knockout blow. But we'll find out as time comes along. Basketball isn't the only thing that's in playoffs right now.
Playoffs?
The NHL, or here they call it the Stanley Cup Playoffs,
Playoffs?
is also underway. Now, to start off, of course, your 1 seeds, which are the Dallas Stars and the Washington Capitals. Now, for the most part, the Washington Capitals have not had much issue. And they are showing why they had the best record in the whole NHL. I mean, when you have arguably the league's top player, that is Alexander Ovechkin, Alexander the Great, whatever name you refer him to, it's not too hard to figure out why. But offense is not also what got them there. They've had a very solid defense, And once again, it's holding up in the playoffs quite well. Your other 1 seed, the Dallas Stars, well, them, not so much. In all actuality, if it wasn't for a couple, people may not like to use this word sometimes when teams win games, but for lack of a better term, if it weren't for 2 lucky goals, and by lucky I mean 2 goals in Game 4 where they're against their opponent, the Minnesota Wild, at the XL Energy Center, 2 of their goals went off one went off a player's skate, another one went off a player's back. Not the goalie's back, not the goalie's skate, another player in front of the goal. But then again, as the saying is, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. By the way, that Game 4, Dallas only won by a goal. Again, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. If those deflections don't happen, Minnesota leads the series 3-2. But if that's all said, who is the favorite to win the Stanley Cup playoffs? Perhaps this might be a bit original, but to me, records do speak a good portion of the story. Not all, but a good portion. Look at the NBA for a quick example. Golden State has the best record. People favor them to win. So, that's what I say for the NHL. The Washington Capitals is my slight favorite. But in NHL, it's a little harder to pick. To me, in hockey, it's a little harder to pick a favorite because there's just so much in the balance. Momentum can shift so quickly. Now, obviously, yes, that can happen in other sports too, but to me in hockey, it just happens a little more frequently and a little more drastically. But a team I will also say keep an eye out for is the Pittsburgh Penguins. 1, they've been there plenty of times. 2, of all the times they've been in the playoffs, they have plenty of experience on how to win. And when you have a player who would also be in the argument for possible best player in the entire NHL, Sidney Crosby, or Sid the Kid, and then you have a goaltender like Marc-Andre Fleury, who has been with the Pittsburgh Penguins even back in the time where they won the Stanley Cup playoffs a few years ago. It just comes all together. Experience matters. It does not matter what sport. No matter what sport it is, experience is a big thing, and that's why I also say keep an eye out for the Penguins. Not saying, again, that they're going to make it all the way to the championship game, but look for them to make a run, as they've also been handling their current opponent right now, the New York Rangers, who also has a lot of hockey tradition. They've been handling them quite well. How far will it lead them to afterwards? We'll find out. It's all about getting the momentum at the right time, and of course, staying healthy. But again, my favorite to win the NHL playoffs, or Stanley Cup, whichever you so desire to label it as, is the Washington Capitals. Thus, I also say don't sleep on that Dallas Stars and Minnesota Wild series though yet. I don't say that just because I'm a Wild fan, but just because, like I said earlier, they have gotten some lucky breaks, but then again, so has Minnesota. And Game 6 at the XL Energy Center, if Minnesota can pull that win off, well then, the pressure may not so much be on Minnesota as much as it would be Dallas. I'll leave it at that. Thursday is the first day of the NFL Draft. And what an exciting draft it's turning out to be. You have the monumental trade between Cleveland and Philadelphia, making headlines all over the place. With that being said, your top 5 teams, the LA Rams first, Eagles going second, San Diego at third, Dallas Cowboys fourth, and the Jacksonville Jaguars in fifth. Now, I'm actually going to go ahead and also label the top 10 because 3 of the teams in the top 10 could really use a quarterback. At 6, you got the Ravens. They don't really need a quarterback, but offensive lineman would do you well. 49ers, quarterback. Browns, quarterback. Buccaneers, defensive backs. And Giants, more so receiver to go by Odell or a linebacker. And an offensive lineman wouldn't do them bad either, protecting Eli Manning. Out of those 10 teams, the Rams, the 49ers, and the Browns could all use a quarterback. And in the top 10, which herein lies the interesting part, according to Kuiper's draft, there's only 2 quarterbacks labeled in the top 10, being Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. After that, your next quarterback in his rankings is all the way down to 28th, which is Paxton Lynch from Memphis. Now, yes, rankings, to me, are nothing more than a stat. Or at least in the draft case, it's nothing more than another stat in classification. You gotta be put somewhere. Just simple as that. Let's go ahead and presume real quick that the Rams take a quarterback. Which one do you prefer? Jared Goff or Carson Wentz? For the Rams aspect, I would lean more towards Goff. Partially because you already have a good running game with the running back, Todd Gurley, who is like a runaway freight train on the field. And you can even hand it off to Tavon Austin once in a while. I mean, they've done it before on wide receiver sweeps. Why stop now? But that's the other thing. If you get Goff, a quarterback, then to me it's also important to the Rams that they look to find another target for him to throw to. Especially now that Jared Cook has moved on to Green Bay, I will say. And real quick, by the way, Ted Thompson, thank you for finally getting involved in free agency. About time. Please feel free to do it more often. But not too often. Please. But with that said, now that Cook is also gone, really, Tavon Austin is really the only other guy there that is the more known target. That ain't gonna work. You have to get him at least one. In fact, my book, get 2 targets, really, that can take some pressure off Austin and help him get open on the field. If you don't, he's going to have a miserable season, and he's probably not going to want to stick around there too much longer if he does not get help after so long. Now, a center wouldn't do them any harm either, or an offensive line for that entire matter, but defensively, as we all know, the Rams are pretty solid. So really, the Rams' number 1 priority this draft should be get some firepower on that offensive side of the ball. And I think, Goff would be a great option. Not saying that Wentz wouldn't be, but Goff would, to me, fit the system a little bit better, and then get some extra options for him to throw to not put all the pressure on Tavon Austin. Now, providing, of course, whether they do or don't take Goff in the very first overall pick, the Niners and Browns could also use a quarterback. 49ers being 7th in the first round, Browns being 8th. Now, the Niners, maybe not as dramatic of a need at quarterback as perhaps the Browns, as the 49ers have done a little fishing with trading, free agency, now that Kaepernick is out the door. And the Browns, well, we all know that circus, that big revolving door that is their quarterback situation year after year after year. Any quarterback that ends up going there, I say Godspeed and good luck. You might, no, probably will need it. But with that said, for the 49ers, say the Rams don't take Wentz or Goff. Which one should they take? In that situation, I say Carson Wentz would be better, only because he's a little more known for his mobility. And obviously with Chip Kelly now going into San Francisco, that's a big thing for him. He loves quarterbacks that can move around, make plays with their feet, or in the very least, extend the play. For the Browns, I'd almost say the same thing. Wentz would be good, but then again, Goff wouldn't be a bad option either. But call me cruel, if you will, for the Browns. I just don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. That team is a circus act. Now, also for the Browns, they, like the Rams, could use an offensive lineman, but if you're getting a quarterback for the Browns, again, you need to get a receiver. I mean, you got Gary Barnidge at tight end, who had a pretty great year, to say the least, at his position. But with Josh Gordon not able to stay out of trouble, and failing another drug test, I will add, to those of you that have not seen that, the likelihood is he ain't coming back anytime too soon. So yes, time to move on from Gordon and get some extra options. Now Travis Benjamin has also been a decent target, but it's the same thing as Tavon Austin. He's good, but he's not a superstar. He needs people around him to take the attention off because he cannot do it by himself. So who would you take at wide receiver? Not many receivers are way at the top here. The first one that you get in Kuiper's draft is Will Fuller from Notre Dame. Wouldn't be a bad pick, to say the least. That's the Browns. Now the final team I'll talk about, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now they could definitely use some offensive linemen. I mean, there's a reason DeMarco Murray left after 1 year. He's not trying to end his career right away. And with that bad of an offensive line of what they had, it was a probability that could have happened because they were just not great by any means. So, offensive lineman, a need. A running back, also a need. But which one do you go for first? If Ezekiel Elliott is there, which they should be, I'm just saying, the Rams don't need a running back. But the Eagles, to me, Ezekiel Elliott would be a decent fit. Then after that, again, same thing as Rams and the Browns are with getting weapons. Get that man some protection. Get him some O-linemen. He will be murdered otherwise. Leaving it at that, there is plenty of offensive linemen up there. I mean, the first guy that's on top of the rankings is an offensive lineman. So maybe if the Rams go quarterback, maybe they'll take him and try to take someone else at running back. But to me, Ezekiel Elliott, I wouldn't sleep on him going to the Eagles. So much can be said about this NFL draft. I mean, you can go on and on, talk for hours. Heck, I could do a whole show just about the NFL draft. I say that because people actually do. But I ain't got that time, and neither do you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the first ever show. I thank you so much for listening, and if you have any comments, critiques, or advice, or something you think I left out, or maybe you want me to talk about in the future, let me know in the comments section. Your feedback and answers, or just want to talk about some things or ideas, are more than appreciated and will definitely be listened to. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for listening, and I will be back at you guys next week.